Who among you would put your banking information on Google? Your bank statement, how much you owe your credit card company? Would you put that up there? Would you put not just your financial information, but how about the things that are most private to you? Do you want people to know every single thing about you? Do you want them to know that you're sitting here right now? And when you went to breakfast this morning, as you get on the train, how much you paid for the train ticket and where you stopped at the cafe. But people do this constantly, every day. And the younger generation is doing it more and more. And privacy in social media is very precious, but it's deceiving. It's a double-edged sword for those of us that are in the investigation industry, because we see the value in what's being put out there. We see that data. It's important to us. We can use it. But we also know that it can be used against us. And for those of us that were in police services or are in fraud investigations now, we know that criminal organizations don't necessarily differentiate between whether or not you are a police officer or an investigator or a claims adjuster or an underwriter. If there's an ability to target you, to manipulate you, they will use it. When I was asked to come over to Amsterdam and do this presentation, other than being extremely excited to be here, I thought of a story that happened many years ago. I was on the campus of California Technical Institute in Pasadena with a friend of mine. We were walking and I found this young woman's ID on the ground. It was from a different university. I couldn't find anybody to give the ID to, and I said, well, I'll just put it in the mail to the university and return the ID. And as we left and my friend drove me to the airport, I said, oh, let me get on my phone, my mobile, and see if I can find her address. And within 30 minutes, I found out more about this young woman than I knew about my own daughters. And I thought about how crazy this was. She was a young scientist, and I thought, we so think about privacy, especially those of us that are older, that grew up in the 60s and 70s. Privacy to us is much different than the idea of privacy to a younger generation. We don't want people to intrude upon us. But she thought nothing about putting up information. This was a young woman who was brilliant. She was a graduate student. She was taking classes at Caltech. She was much more intelligent than I will ever think about being. And yet she would put poses up online. And when I see poses of a young girl online, I think of my daughters and I think of stalkers and I think of criminals that are going to manipulate and use this information. She had her driver's license, government IDs up with all the information. She had her passport information up, where she had been, where she had traveled. She had so much information up there, it was crazy. And in 30 minutes on my mobile, I was not only to find out, her name, her address, so I could mail the ID back to her directly, but everything about her, where she lived, what the apartment looked like inside, how many cats she had, her boyfriend's schedule, where she went to yoga classes, where she got her coffee in the morning. I could have easily tracked her. Had I been somebody bad, I could have easily stolen her identity. And that's the trouble with people and online privacy. Younger children, and I call them children because they are, in their 20s, and I have no offense to those of you in your 20s, but you don't think about how you display, how you store, or how the data is being stored, and how it's being repurposed. Because we all want to be important. We want to be special. That's the great part of social media, is that it allows us to be bigger in life, to live that life, at least online, that we want. Okay? I didn't post anything on Facebook for a month, and yet I have posted so many things about Amsterdam in the last couple of days, and all my friends think I am this world traveler. How lucky I am, right? And it feels great. But even though I get to choose how to display that material online, or sometimes not think and put information up online, it's amazing to me that people do not think about this, that they're willing to give out all this information, whether it's their passport information and visa, whether it's their financial data. They are going crazy with putting that out there. And it's a double-edged sword. It's important for us as insurers, as investigators, to think about this data. How can we use this for risk assessment? How can we use this for underwriting? How can we use this for claims investigations? Because the data is there. And though they get to choose how they display it, and places like Facebook and Instagram may choose how to store it, they don't get to choose how to repurpose it. I don't think any of those first two people thought that their posts, their pictures, would be in a presentation in Amsterdam in 2018 when they put it up there. They have no control over where this data has gone, how I'm using it. They've lost the ability to repurpose it. And that's our advantage as investigators. If we know how we can use social media to impact our investigations, we can take that information and we can store it for long term. Because the GDPR has done a great job of saying you can be forgotten. But how are you forgotten? What do you have to do? You have to go to Facebook and say, remove that. You have to go to Google and say, remove that. But what happens if I've already captured that? What happens if a system, an automated system, is in place to capture that information and the person doesn't know that that's there? It can still be used. There are companies, and I'm sure Friss is building out a product, that will capture data from social media. It may retain that over time. So you're not necessarily going to be forgotten if somebody else has captured it and you don't know about it. And trust me, there are many things on the internet we wish we could forget. Now, are these of historical significance? Maybe. Maybe we have to keep them out on the internet, okay? But while people say, well, we need to remove this information, remember that if I take something of yours and put it out onto the internet, on social media, have you lost your ability to control that data? I do not post a lot on Facebook. My wife posts everything on Facebook, which also immediately goes to her Instagram account. So while you may go to my profile and not see much, if you know how to manipulate social media, you can find an immense amount of data. But it's not just Facebook. It's LinkedIn. I saw this a few weeks ago and I was amazed. You have this CEO who has 30,000+ followers on LinkedIn, who posts this young gentleman's resume and essentially tells people, hey, I'm willing to post one resume a week for everybody, just put it in the comments section. Now, well-intentioned CEO to help somebody get a job. But in the comments that followed, there had to be hundreds of resumes listed with their personal information, some with their dates of birth, some with important financial information on it. Some people had a PayPal account number listed to it. I'm not sure why you would put that on your resume, but it was there. And I thought, here is a well-intentioned CEO trying to help somebody. Here are people who may be jobless, who may be financially strapped and looking for work, willing to give this data out here. But now that it's there, now that it's on LinkedIn, how do they control it? They might be able to go in and think to delete it, but now I've captured it. Now a criminal organization looking to do identity fraud has captured that and kept it. And they've lost that ability to control the data. And when we talk about personal data, I think we also get confused sometimes because it's different between social media and what we think of. So traditionally, and according to the GDPR, right, personal information is those things that we find most intimate about ourselves, our name, our address, our mobile device numbers, right? But it's much more than that. It's your favorite TV show, okay? It's your favorite cafe that you go to every day. Do you consider that personal information? You should. And I don't mean just to protect yourselves, but I mean when you're working and you're looking at how you're going to use social media data. Start thinking outside of the norms. Start thinking about how the fact that your favorite cafe could be used to find you online, could be used to track you online. How about your favorite religion? And yes, that is actual religion. Yes, that is an automatic weapon in her hands. Yes, she does have a crown on her head. And most importantly, her name is on the rifle so she doesn't get it confused with anybody else's automatic weapon. But can you imagine if I wanted to target this woman? First, I know her name, it's Caroline. And now I can target maybe her synagogue or her church or her temple if I know what religion she is. I need nothing more than her name, maybe an age range, and a couple pieces of information, and I can find her social media profiles, even if she's not using the real name out there. We don't think about our languages. I will be self-deprecating here and say that I am a stupid American. I speak one language. When I'm in America, if I want to target somebody and I know they speak French or they speak Spanish, it is easier for me to whittle out all the profiles of people who don't say they speak two languages and focus only on the ones that say they speak multiple languages, because that pool is narrower in the US than over here. And it helps me find people's profiles quickly. So why do we care about personal data? Well, Facebook gives us the ability to control some of this information. They all do, all the social media platforms, whether it's Snapchat or Instagram. They tell us, they conceive and kind of trick us into believing that we have more control than we do. Who can look at my post? Just my friends. Who has the ability to look me up by an email address? Just my friends, which isn't actually true. Salih here is from Amsterdam, and he has gone through great pains to remove any information from his profile. He has not added any information whatsoever. Nothing about himself, nothing about his family, his relationships. And yet, he likes his mosque. He took one like, which was not protected under Facebook, which you have no real control to manage. There are some things that you can manage, but it's there. So if I know his mosque, I can find him. And it's as simple as going to the Facebook address bar and saying, Facebook, I want you to search for all males who are linked to this mosque, and everything on Facebook has a code, and once you learn that code, you can detail all your searches. And I want people who like his mosque, and I want this to intersect. And what I end up getting is a listing of all the men who like this mosque. No other information whatsoever, and I can pick him out of the crowd. Yet he went through great pains to not give me any information, and yet there it is. So why do we care? Well, we care because we, the government, investigators, we can use this information. It can help us. It can help us narrow things down. It can help us build out criminal organizations. We can show relationships between parties. It can be used by government for bad things. But it can also help us when people are stupid enough to pose with the stolen car they just took or the money from the robbery. It's a double-edged sword, right? Now, I say you have to be careful because I want you to protect yourself. When I was thinking about what I was going to talk about, privacy just kept coming up to the forefront. And when I found Salih, with no happenstance, just picked him out of the crowd. I don't know him, I've never met him. He's just an example for today. I thought, how do I get across to you that it's important for you to be concerned about your own privacy online, but also to explain how you can use this for yourself, how you can really use this information in your investigations. Salih is a perfect example where if you look, you'll see that his Facebook profile has nothing but the picture of him, which was in 2015. That's the last public post you can see. And yet, if I manipulate Facebook and I say, Facebook, I don't want you to look at his profile. I want you to search all of Facebook and find me anything that is connected to his profile. I find photos that are tagged, that he's tagged in, that he's recommended, that he's listed in. So his profile picture that he put up, but pictures from his friends and his relatives. I can narrow that information down so that I can see pictures that he's just liked or pictures that he's commented on. So imagine the idea that you go to somebody's Facebook profile and you see nothing. Many times, investigators in the past gave up. But if you know that you can look at their friends and their relatives, if you think of my wife who posts everything up there, right? You know that that information isn't true. There's information about me being all over Amsterdam the last 2 days, and if you know which friend of mine to check, you will see that information. And when you look at things like comments, so the picture of the passport and the ticket, and we look down further into that, we will see that there are nuggets of information there. There are gold mines of information if we just explore a little bit more. So that one caught my eye because it was a ticket to Amsterdam, and it was definitely a passport that was not US, not Canadian. If I am looking at Celine as a target, an organized crime, don't I want more information about who he interacts with? Well, what better than somebody who's flying to where he lives? And a quick click, and I get the comments. And thanks to Facebook, it immediately translates it over to English for us dumb Americans, so I can read immediately what it says. And I know from just a quick second that now Ersin is his nephew. That's information I didn't have before. That's information I could not get looking at his profile. It's a matter of turning how you search, how AI, how you think, how we look at personal data, and using that to our benefit. So now, again, if he was a criminal organization or members of a criminal organization, which he is not, to my knowledge, if I'm looking at them, I've started to build that network. And Ersin is younger, right? We would presume he is younger because he's his nephew. And younger generations tend to do what on social media? Put everything out there. So if Salih is the target of my investigation, I may not necessarily want to spend a lot of time looking at him. I want to go to Ersin because he may put up a lot more data. And that's where social media becomes very valuable for us. It's where AI becomes very valuable for us. It's where technology becomes very valuable for us. Because for me to sit there and start putting all those pieces together, to look around my target, can take me hours and days to do. But with technology, we can run faster. Now, there's a downside. Think of all the things that you have liked online, all the sports clubs, all the places you've checked in to have dinner, all the food pictures that you've taken. Okay? Have you liked everything? Do you remember, for those of you who have Facebook for many years ago, do you remember what you liked in 2009 and 2010? Did you remove that information? Do you want to be like Marcel, the only person on Facebook who is a male who went to the University of Amsterdam and likes Mistress Susie? Because he is the only one on Facebook that fits that criteria. And I'm sure he hasn't told his wife yet. But can you imagine being able to sit there and say, I do not know what my target's information, I don't know what name he's using on Facebook. Well, I'm going to get rid of all the women on Facebook by just searching for men. And I know that he was in Amsterdam. So he must have checked in Amsterdam somewhere. I'm going to search for men in Amsterdam. And I know he was in the red light district, which I didn't realize my hotel was in until I checked in. So there are many places that I think I could probably find maybe Marcel hanging out at. Okay? And if I know those, I can search for him. So just remember, social media and privacy go hand in hand. And privacy is a double-edged sword. You need to be able to understand it. You need to be able to not only know that it exists, know that Snapchat is popular, know that you have to start using mobile phones and not desktop computers to search people, but you also have to understand how to protect yourselves. Once you learn some of these tips and tricks, and I am happy anybody that wants more information, I couldn't fit 8 hours into 18 minutes. It's in English, but I am happy to email you information and PowerPoint presentations and books that I've started and never finished because they're outdated before I get done. But I'm happy to share that information to you because that's what it's all about, whether it's Me being across the pond, you being here, it's about sharing information, and I'm happy to give it to you. Use that data. Learn how to find your targets and learn how to protect yourselves and your family. Thank you.